What up, guys? Welcome to New Jersey HorrorCon. Any Nightmare on Elm Street fans out there in the room? Yeah, a little bit? Okay. All right. I think we can make a little bit more noise for who we have today because we have Mark Patton, Kim Myers, and Ken Sagoes. Make some noise! So thank you guys so much for taking the time again. I'll do a couple questions, get the room warmed up. When I see hands going up, I know you guys got a lot of questions. I'll start calling them out. So starting at the beginning, if we could, what were your impressions of the franchise prior to being cast in Nightmare films?
Well, I'll lead it off because unfortunately I had no impressions of the franchise because I hadn't seen the first one. So Mark and I, of course, are in part 2. So there was only obviously one other ahead of ours. I had not seen the film before I auditioned for the role of Lisa, and when I learned about the popularity of the original, I consciously chose not to see it. So I'm probably not the best person to answer that question.
Ken?
Take it away.
First of all, thank you for inviting us here. And I am happy to be with Kim and Mark. Even though I'm with the Dream Warriors, I do consider these my dear friends. And like her, I didn't know about the franchise. I didn't even know what Nightmare on Elm Street was. So, but they got a call for me to come down and audition for it. And they wanted a really nice, slim bodybuilder guy with a 34-inch waist. And I didn't want to go because that was my waist, my thighs. So, so to make a long story short, I went in with an attitude, and that's what they was looking for.
For me, it was interesting because I actually screen tested to play Glenn first, and then so Heather and I had tested together for the first Nightmare on Elm Street. But the minute I left, I never thought about it again. I mean, honestly. And then I got hired to play Jesse, and they set up a screening for me on. My friend and I at Grauman's Chinese Theater at midnight watched this movie alone and I just thought, oh my God, what the fuck have I done? I have no idea. I can't believe I'm going to do this, So, but it was exciting. You know what I mean? It became the universe of Nightmare on Elm Street is something that's just evolved over time, and you can ask any of us. It's endless. It's almost like we've been in this whole world that didn't exist before we were born. Actually, it's a trip to be affiliated with it.
Very cool. So, one thing I wanted to ask you guys about, New Line Cinema's rise to the top is one of the most impressive in all of modern Hollywood, if you really think about it. It happened in a very short time. And it's no secret that it was built entirely off of the success of this franchise. So I'm curious, how hands-on was New Line head Bob Shea during the production of your films? Was he, very involved in the day-to-day aspects of it, not heavily involved, or? And also what it was like to work for New Line in the 80s.
Yes.
I just did a documentary. I've done my documentary, Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, is coming out next week. Next week is the first showing at the Cleveland International Film Festival. 5 years, $500,000, and I hope everybody likes it. Fangoria just did a nice article about us, and the reviews are really good. But I can really talk to Nightmare on Elm Street and New Line with facts behind me. Actually, Bob Shea was on the set a lot. He played the bartender in Nightmare on Elm Street 2 in the leather bar. He's the bartender. And he wanted to play Grady's father, but Jack wouldn't let him because he said he needed a real actor, for that part. But when Nightmare on Elm Street, the first Nightmare on Elm Street came out, they had sold the rights to everything. They were completely broke. And so the house that Freddy was built on is really Nightmare on Elm Street 2, because when we opened, we made $50 million, and overnight they had $50 million. And that's when he started spending. So if the sequel hadn't been a success, there wouldn't have been a New Line Cinema. But I often say, I talked to Bob in my documentary, and I wondered if anybody actually had read Nightmare on Elm Street 2 before they started shooting it, because none of them knew anything about the script. Like when they did Never Sleep Again, they were like, I never saw that. And I finally went back to each of them and said, did you ever read the script before you started shooting the movie? And I really don't think they did. I think they were just lucky. And then he turned out to be a very smart man, that Bob Shea. Because you have, you have Sleepy Hollow, there would be no Lord of the Rings, there would be no John Waters. All of that came out of this money, which is really exciting, I think.
Very impressive stuff.
And I'm happy about that because Nightmare Part 3 I felt was so wonderful because it brought all of us young actors together under Chuck Russell, and Bob Shea was not on the set for that. But what I'm grateful for with Nightmare on Elm Street, it allowed me to make history because I'm the first African American to ever survive a horror film and return for a sequel. And so I thank them for that.
Very cool. So Nightmare 2 through 4 are, like, to me, the very core of like how the franchise expanded to the iconic status that it is, today. Were you guys ever surprised at how much the franchise and its success just kept growing and growing and growing, throughout the 80s, or was that like not a shocker at all?
Yeah, I was completely surprised. We shot our film. I was in between my freshman and sophomore year of college. I left college after my sophomore year and started working just solely as an actress, and thankfully so. But yeah, it was kind of amazing to see it continue and thrive and morph into all these different storylines with Freddie of course, at the core of it. So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Yes.
As for myself, I did not know anything about Nightmare on Elm Street. And I come from a very religious family, and they was fighting for me not to do the movie because I had to curse. And so my pastor had said I shouldn't do it because it's demons and stuff. So I ended up calling a friend of ours who was in her 90s, who every Sunday went to church with a white dress on, white hat, carried her Bible. She even had a Bible that was white. And when I called her and told me about the film, and she said, well, baby, let me put my Bible down. And I told her, I said, well, they don't want me to do the movie. She said, well, honey, does it pay? And I said, yes, ma'am. So she said, fuck 'em. So if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be doing this movie.
Wow.
And who would think and that I would meet so many wonderful people doing Nightmare on Elm Street. And Kincaid has become a legend within the Dream Warriors, and I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
For me, I think maybe some of you know my story and some of you don't. I just left after, I quit show business shortly after Nightmare on Elm Street came out. And I left the country. So by the time I came back to do Never Sleep Again, I knew kids dressed up as Freddy Krueger and all that kind of stuff, but when I came back for Never Sleep Again, I had no social media, I had no idea about these horror conventions, and they put me online and I had 100,000 hits overnight. And then we picked up I realized I was a little bit famous, and then, so I started to squeeze the juice out of being famous, and I wanted to take my experience with Nightmare on Elm Street and turn it into something more that was more than Elm Street. And so we've traveled the world, basically, and we're going to be traveling into further and further countries. And I think my accountant said that when we're deep into Social Security, we'll still be doing this. So to just try to enjoy it and take it for what it is. But you are part of pop culture history. It's hard to wrap your mind around that on a certain level, but we are. We're the kids of Elm Street, and we always will be. And we'll be just like the Brady Bunch. We'll be 80 years old, signing lunch boxes somewhere. But I think this little group will do it with a smile on their face and be nice about it. So that's all that matters. If you have a good time, it's great. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. Another aspect that, again, with the Nightmare movies is these particular movies feel as fresh today as they did when they came out in the 80s. They have not aged a second. And I was wondering if that's something that has been a surprise to you guys, or, again, if that's something you kind of not shocked about.
It's always a surprise to me when we do these conventions and meet the families, the second and the third generations even of fans of Elm Street. And it's mind-blowing. It continues to surprise me and make me smile and kind of baffle me at the same time.
Let me ask you a question. You said the movies haven't aged?
The movies have they've aged very well, is what I'm saying. Is they feel as
because my
fresh.
ass has gotten old.
Get out of here! You guys are all on a time warp.
Oh, wow. Just say yeah. Thank you. That's a blessing. Thank you.
Well, you know what it's funny about Nightmare on Elm Street? The whole cast. It's like on all of the parts, we all still, now of course we're 30 years older than we were, but all of us look like the same people. And we travel like Amanda, Heather, Kim, myself, Ken. You recognize us as those people, but then we're traveling with some people that we really love, and it's like, I'm like, that's his grandfather, that's not him. So I think they got good genetics here for
That's
us.
the key.
Yeah.
I mean, I just turned 60. My birthday I was 60 years old, and it's wild to watch people, say they can recognize me still from that amount of time ago. It's good genes in the end.
And I'm actually a grandfather.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I think the movies look fresh too, also because they cast them on the kids, on the family, and that's why the difference between, say, Part 4 ends part of a cycle, and then when it becomes more focused on Robert and Freddy Krueger, when he really takes control of the series, and it's not about the kids anymore. But the storylines are what keep the first ones fresh, because the parents are real parents. They may be doofy, but they have a backstory. Even her parents in our movie, you know who they are. They're not just stock characters. They have a little story, and you feel for them like you like them. That's very rare in horror, because usually it's just get rid of the parent as fast as they can. I think they do stand up, and because we know, we have 14, 15, 16-year-old kids coming up to our table all the time, and we're signing them things.
So I was curious what your guys' thoughts were on the remake and why you think it didn't really relaunch the franchise to, at least certainly not to the busy status it had in the 80s.
Oh, as for me, I saw the remake, and I didn't think it was a bad film. I just think that Robert Englund did such a wonderful job that it was, when you went to the theaters, you wanted to see that actor become Robert Englund. And Robert Englund is his own entity. And I think the guy who did it did a wonderful job. He just simply wasn't Robert Englund. And because Robert, he loved that role. He embodied that role. He had fun with that role. And so if you go in and watch the movie, I think you will come out enjoying the movie a lot more. Did I say that right?
Oh, you did a wonderful job, I think.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say that the mistake, it was a mistake. First, it was hubris of young people. Like a young person went in and said, I'm going to remake this movie, and I'm going to, it's going to be my Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, they should have, at the very least, said to Robert, look, we don't want you to be in this movie, but we're going to pay you $1 million to go out and talk about it very nicely. Yeah. But you don't insult that person who has a fan base that's worldwide, who literally turned on the movie before it ever started. But if they would have had Robert on board and said, this is Jackie, he's a friend of mine, and then they would have honored the franchise. But the franchise is coming back. It's not dead. Don't think it's dead. They have the wrong Freddy Krueger, but I wish they would actually take Elm Street and do a not American Horror, but American Justice. Is that what they call it? The 6-part miniseries with different, and I think they should have a different kid for every. So you get 6 parts, 6 hours.
That could be really cool.
And then you can go into the darker aspects of what we want now. So the gay thing in my movie now would be very cool to do. It wouldn't be something that people would be repulsed by or whatever. You could really go on a journey with that kid and his nightmares and everything, and treat it with a lot of respect, and I think it would do really, really well. But the movie's coming back. They're already talking about, they're now going to do part 2. So
With Jackie
which
O'Haley?
they were going to jump from 1 to 3, but because they wanted to take part 2 out of the franchise. But
Whoa.
now they've started to embrace part 2 again. So
Wow.
we had something to do with that.
So they're doing a part 2 with Jackie O'Haley, or is it
not
going to
with
be
Jackie. I
not
can't
with
say
Jackie?
who they're. I mean, most people know who they're going to do it with, but
Right.
I'm not supposed to say.
Oh, of course, absolutely. No, I wouldn't ask you.
But yeah,
to do
they're
that.
doing it, and it's not Jackie.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. Well, we'll be
It
curious.
should be me, actually. I mean, really think about it. I could be Freddy Krueger. I mean, I couldn't really. I couldn't do the part, but it'd be great if Jesse turned into Freddy. That'd be.
That would be awesome.
You know, I think you'd be a great Freddy Krueger.
Oh, thanks. I would be terrified to even try to do
That's
anything
what would
like
make
that.
you great, because you know him.
Oh
And
yeah.
you got some revenge in you.
I'm the
I'm
child.
gonna
I'm the
kick that
child of
motherfucker.
Freddy, and I could have all kinds of issues with Freddy.
Yeah.
Like daddy issues with my daddy Freddy, and
Yeah.
we could just do all kinds of nasty things.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
I wrote a book. It's called Jesse's Lost Journals, because I got tired of sort of answering the same questions over and over again. So I wrote this backstory of what really was going on in Jesse's life, and Freddy uses Jesse as porn. So read the book. It's really fun.
Wow, that sounds pretty interesting too. Kim, did you have any thoughts on the remake and stuff?
I hate to admit it, but I did not see it, so that's why I'm being quiet.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I try and avoid remakes at all costs because, let's face it, like 99,000% of the time, the originals are always going to be better. But I couldn't resist. I love Nightmare on Elm Street so much. I was like, all right, this is on TV. I'm going to watch this. I'm going to be quiet then after that. It's just, you know what? It didn't live up to the standard you guys set in your films, which was incredible. And obviously Robert's standard as well.
We were talking about, somebody came up to our tables and was speaking very nostalgically about the 80s films, and horror films, but not only horror films. And so we were talking about that, and I think in relation to what you're saying, that the remake didn't live up, most remakes don't live up to the first one, but I think in this case there is an energy, there was a style of filmmaking, and there was an energy, I think, in, I don't know what it is, maybe in not only the storytelling, but I think
Oh, it's the
also-
whole. I agree. It's like, I think when you look at Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, it's like Freddy's only in the movie for about 11 minutes, right? He's present all the time. And it's one of those, they're telling a story, do you know what I mean? And the ambiance. And you don't get to see everything. And I think that in horror especially is very evocative. If you're going to put everything into CGI, and we're going to get to watch your brains explode and all that kind of stuff, it becomes a totally different thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I always think of like going to the movie theater, like especially with horror films. It's like the lights go down, you know what's coming, the first blind, the ritual, right? And so you fall into that, and you have to honor it. And that's why 80s horror is so good. But if all of a sudden you're inside Freddy's glove or sliding through his brain or whatever, it just doesn't work. It's like the minute you see 10,000 soldiers in a movie, you leave the movie. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you see those computer animated 10,000 soldiers, you're like, oh, that looks crappy.
Yeah.
It'd be better to have 4 soldiers and pretend, because you'll stay on the fantasy.
Yeah.
And to stay into horror and to be frightened by horror, you have to make a commitment to it. You have to make a commitment to what you're going in there for. And you know what's going to happen, but you let it happen to you anyway. So, and it's the darkness that does it, the music, all that. And the soundtracks for Nightmare on Elm Street are amazing.
Oh yeah, all of them, incredible. Well, Dream Warriors, of course, got to throw some love to Doc in, too. But anyway, guys, I know you guys have a lot of questions for these guys. Anyone want to jump in? You brave souls?
Hey, so obviously the Nightmare films are pretty famous for special effects and stuff like that. And I was just curious, what was it like working with? I feel like, especially in part 2, you guys have some pretty intense scenes with some large special effects. You might have been all right, but maybe not. So, what was it just like working with crazy stuff like that?
For me, I mean, I probably have the best one of all, actually, because that transformation, the body transformation, is all puppets. It's all acting. It's all, it's amazing. It was there were puppets of me, live castings of me, and it took 3 days to shoot that scene, and it looks cheesy now if you slow it down, but it's like when you were watching that in the 80s, it was just revolutionary. And Mark Shostrom and Kevin Yeager will say often, it was a combination of us. It's acting. That's what it is. It's all about the eyes, and that's it. And if the actor can't sell the gag, then it's not going to work. It's like the birds, right? The man that did the birds in Nightmare on Elm Street, the parakeet, well, it was his last job. He was very famous, and he was from another school, you know what I mean? It was like, and that's what special effects used to be like, those birds blowing up. And then the next step was us turning in these transformations. It's really fun. It's really hard. It's nasty. I mean, we have a Freddy Krueger traveling with us right now. Go and see him and feel underneath his mask, because it's a sweatshop. And Roberts were more intense than that. Do you know what I mean? That stuff is glued to your skin. And you're under 100 degrees of light. It's nasty. And then it pulls your skin off when you come up. So it's not glamorous, but it's cool,
For 3, I didn't have that much. What I always say is that they put a lot of the special effects in afterwards. So it helped me as an actor. So I think to pretend that the stuff was there. So it was very motivated for me to really act. And Lawrence Fishburne, who was in Nightmare 3, he's the one that took me to the side and taught me how to do physical acting and to do imaginary acting. So it helped me as a artist to work on my craft.
The chest wasn't there?
No, that was another chest. They had 3 razors for me. They had one that he played around with, and then one that was really a sharp one. So what I had to go and be molded, and they put one over me, over my stomach, and then they brought in another one that they went inside the shirt. But that was 4. That was my last check.
Kim, do you have any stories working the prosthetics?
Similarly to Ken, I did not have as much special effect kind of relation to special effects in the moment. They were added. I'm thinking of. What am I thinking of? Oh, the power plant. Going down the catwalk and the falling, quote unquote, when the steel, what do you call it? The steel grate gives way, and the railing is supposed to be very hot. So it definitely forces you to really tap into your imagination and really think about this, be very specific. And so similarly, it was great training, just getting to play with that.
Very cool. Guys, questions? One in the back? I think I heard that was particular. You're asking about their favorite scenes? Oh, favorite scene that didn't make it, that got cut? Any favorite scenes that you filmed that got cut and didn't make it into the movies?
All our scenes made it into the movie.
Yeah, all our scenes.
This was bare bones. It's not. It was like, this is the script. This is what you're shooting, and it wasn't. They weren't luxury products. They used all the film that they had, and like in ours, say, when the film was testing, there was no killing in the first half of our movie originally, and Schneider was actually supposed to die after somebody else, but I can't remember. But they moved that Schneider death all the way up to the front because it was testing as the slow. People wanted to see somebody get killed. That's why, thank God, Marshall had blonde hair, sort of, because he was the first blonde to die, But yeah, so there was really nothing left over for us. They used it all. Yeah.
Wow. No room at New Line for deleted scenes, I guess. I don't know. Any questions?
I was like the best.
It was like working with Wes Craven.
Well, we didn't work with
Yeah,
Wes.
He came to the set one time, but I didn't really actually meet him until I was at a function, and I met him there. But he was not on the set of Nightmare 3 at all.
And for us, Wes, I had auditioned for Wes for the first Nightmare on Elm Street, so I knew Wes that way. But Wes hated our movie. And the reason that he hated it was because he didn't want any sequels. And so Bob needed the money. So there was going to be a sequel, and Wes was very upset about it. So ultimately, in the end, where our movie was supposed to really go was like this. It was going to be that I was going to kill her, that Jesse would kill Lisa in the end. And then I would come back with Nancy, right? But about at the end of our shooting, they realized Wes was coming back. And he said he would come back and do the third one because they realized there was a lot of money at stake now. So they just unresolved us. I mean, neither one of us die at the end of the movie, right? And then they never mention us again. Because what Wes did, and come and see my documentary, please, but I like Wes Craven a lot, and I like Bob Shea a lot, but they're very disrespectful people. They put us in this situation where they put out a movie and they made $100 million off of us, and then they pretended like we didn't exist. And we were the ones that, Kim and I and our cast, carried the burden of that for a long time, of being like the Elm Street that nobody likes, the one that doesn't fit the bill, all the things that people would say about that, the failure. But we were the most financially successful one of all. We're probably the most popular one in the world, but it was all because it wasn't Wes's vision. So when you talk about the rules and all that kind of stuff, they didn't exist. There was none of that. It's like if you were really doing a franchise in the way that it should be done, following rules, the rules were actually set in Nightmare on Elm Street 2. They weren't set in 1. But because of the way the press handled it, it was like, it's 1, 3, 4, 5. And 2 is the outlier and has become its own special movie. So we didn't have a really good relationship with Wes, but Wes did come back and do my documentary, as did Robert, and Robert, and all the Roberts. But they just didn't really want us involved in anything. So, and that's just the way show business goes sometimes, They could have made a lot of money off us, and they might still eventually in the end, but who knows?
Questions out there? When's the documentary coming out?
The documentary, we open at the Cleveland International Film Festival next week. That'll be our first showing. We sold 2,000 tickets in less than 2 hours, I think. And we're going all over the world. I have 17 film festivals lined up in the next 20 weeks or so. Some of them are very close to you guys, but I can't say the name out loud. But if you got on a train, you'd be able to go and see it next month. Let's put it that way. But it'll be at all these film festivals. Then it's bought. There's a bidding war going on for it now. And whenever somebody buys it, like Netflix, whatnot, then the DVD or the online streaming starts immediately. But we have commitments to film festivals that people don't see it before you're sitting in the theater. And it's far enough away that I can say we are going to headline Outfest in Los Angeles, and they're doing a huge thing for us, and the whole cast is going to be there, and Robert and all those people to talk about this for posterity. So come and see it. It's really wonderful. Stop by my table. I'll give you a little card. It's called Scream, Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's a very powerful, fun film. So I hope you all like it.
Cool. Well, should mention that we do have a film festival here, and I'm sure a lot of people would love to see that anytime.
Oh, I know. It was so weird to be coming here. You know what I mean? Because this date with Cleveland was set a long time ago.
I'm sorry?
But the date was set, Cleveland was set a long time ago. Like, I can show up as Mark Patton, the actor, here, but I can't. My film can't be shown here because of financial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like when the film festivals start to bid on you, like if you want to be in the Tribeca Film Festival, you can't go to South by Southwest first. They won't let you if you're being premiered into a festival. So you let the people pick you in the beginning, and then you fill your dance card around that. So we'll be at the Toronto Film Festival. A lot of the big ones, but
nice.
our thing was partially funded by Tribeca Film Festival, and Robert De Niro paid for some of my money of the movie, and so that'll show you if you follow the where we'll be going that I can't say.
Very cool. Very cool. So I think we have time for one last one, guys. Anyone got one more out there? No, everyone's getting shy. All right, well, I can ask one more to send you guys off. Well, actually, one for each of you guys, if that's cool. One, I wanted to ask Ken. You use your time and your voice to champion a pretty incredible charity. So what can you tell us about your work with Giving Back, and how can us horror fans contribute?
I never forgot when I was a kid and the many times that I wanted to go to summer camp and I couldn't afford to. And when I went to college, I couldn't afford my books. And I remember an elderly lady helping me. So I promised God that whenever I got in a position, I was going to always give back. So in 1997, I started an organization called the Giving Back Corporation, where I send kids to camp during the summer, and I pay for kids' books when they go to school. And I'm happy to say, so far I have helped put over 400 kids through college. And as of last year, 4 of those kids had went on and got their PhD, 26 have gotten their master's, and right now I'm helping about 40 kids through school. And so 75 to 80% of all my funds go to helping my Giving Back Corporation, because I don't want to forget for which I've come, and that means something to me. And I just wrote my book. It's called The McHenry Trial. It's about a 14-year-old young man who becomes a trial lawyer, and his first case is defending his father for murder, who was accused of murder. And it's kind of like Dookie Howser in the hood. And so one more thing, just so you know that my support with helping kids is all across the United States. It's just not in one area. And I think I've helped 2 kids, 3 kids. 1 I've sent to camp here in New Jersey, and 2 I've helped with their books in college. So I thank you.
And then, again, for Kim, seeing as how you were in Hellraiser Bloodline, did you ever entertain the idea of, Pinhead versus Freddy, and can you spot the difference between Nightmare fans and Hellraiser fans at conventions?
No, I can't spot the difference between the fans, but more often than not, the fans are Freddy fans. I'll get a smattering of Pinhead fans, but what was the first part of your question? Do I see a face-off between?
Well, if you did you ever entertain the notion of that, like when you were making, I wonder what would happen, like?
It's an interesting thought, and I'm surprised it hasn't happened. Although they're both such kind of prominent entities, I don't know if they could handle the competition.
They would probably need to invent new screens for that, And then last one before we go, I did want to ask Mark, since you have your documentary coming out, what other cast members from 2 can we expect to see in that documentary?
In Scream Queen, everybody's there. Everybody from most of the films are there. Ken's in it. Certainly, very present. Robert Englund, me, Robert Russler, just everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're all there. And it's our documentary. It's not like we're not talking to the screen, the way say Never Sleep Again is. We're actually talking to each other. And it does become, well, especially with David and I, of course, and Jack Shoulder, but David and I particularly. And I want to warn you when you go in there, when you see the previews, it's like Jack just saw the previews the other day, and he was like frantically on the phone, kind of going like, I don't want people to think this about me. And Jack comes out just fine. We gave David a lot of opportunities to redeem himself in a lot of ways. And he seems like a really nice man, but he doesn't really come off very good in the film. Some of the things he says are so bizarre. And I met with some critics the other day. I was doing an interview yesterday for Fangoria upstairs, actually. And they had a bunch of film critics, and I was like, and they asked me a question about David, the question that everybody will ask when they see this movie. And I never weighed in on that subject at all. It's like, because it's none of my business, and I don't care, and I didn't do this to like do something to another person. But all the film critics are like, don't worry, we'll do it for you. You don't have to say anything. And we called them and said, let us walk you through what's about to happen to you. Because there's a lot of people, like there's a lot of young and old gay people in the world who are really angry at you. And they project a lot of that stuff on me, and they want to protect me. So you need to watch out. You should get off social media and just stay away for a while, because some angry fags out there are going to go after you. And you know what? At a certain point now, because we gave him a lot of opportunities, and at this point, this is his part of the karma. He just has to live it, So, and I have empathy for him. I wouldn't want it to be me, but it's a wonderful film. It's very redemptive. It's very hopeful. In the end, he apologizes to me, which is really, really sweet. But then the next day, he went out and gave an interview to the New York Times that was so hideous that we were just like, dude, we haven't cut the film yet. We just shot it, So I think you'll love it. It really will, whether you're straight or you're gay or not, about 2/3 of the way through the film, people start crying. And then I think they begin to recognize themselves. If you've ever been bullied in any way, you'll love this movie. It's Jesse's revenge. So I at least had a camera to stand in front of. So I want y'all to come. I want you to see it, write to me. I'll get it to you some way if you want to see it. You don't have an opportunity. And our project is the Trevor Project, which is, most of you know what it is, but we support specifically gay and lesbian kids, but very specifically gay boys between the ages of like 14 and 20 who are at risk for suicide. And the reason they are at risk for suicide is because somebody's shaming them in the schools and shaming them online. So we're trying to do an outreach to keep those kids really safe and to keep you safe, because no matter who you are, if you've been trolled on the internet now, you know what can happen in a heartbeat to you. And it hurts, and especially if you're young and unformed, it can destroy your life. So watch out for your kids, watch out for your friends, have each other's backs, because there's a lot of mean people in the world,
Awesome. Well, that just about does it, guys. Give these incredible castmates a round of applause here.
And if you haven't been by our table, come by and support us.
That's right. Get some photos, get some autographs, and they have more stories as well.